Right. Started, sir.
Shall I start it from the?
No. You can resume from here only.
Can you see it?
Yes, sir. Now it is visible, sir. Yes, sir. Now it is visible.
So, if you look into it, there are three eras of pre-1993 when the introduction of CO2 laser into laryngeal practice and the use of laser was started by Jaco and Strong. And then extensive work has been done by the Steiner. And when the his landmark publication came in 1993, which has really changed the application of CO2 laser in malignancy larynx. Then in 2000, the classification of cordectomy, it came up under the committee of Remekel et al. And there are many other contributors into it. And they give the first classification. And then from that 2000, 2020, we are into this era where the extended application of CO2 laser in malignancy larynx. Beside it, there are many diagnostics advancement into it. And we are into this era. And 2007 was the era when the one more addition has been done in the endoscopic cordectomy classification, that is type 6 cordectomy. So that was a revised classification of endoscopic cordectomy, and the both has been published in European archives. So once we talk about the transoral laser surgery, what is the ideal goal for it? The ideal goal is most adequate therapeutic approach. You should have a most adequate therapeutic approach, ensure highest oncological success, and lowest impact in terms of morbidity and cost. Because once we are talking of lasers, or it should be a unimodal, not be combined that you tell the patient that. So if it is not indicated, one should not venture into doing a just for the namesake that you want to do it with laser. So there are limited application of it. Early laryngeal cancer, you can treat it with laser. So what are the limits of lasers in laryngeal cancer? Those things I'll come up gradually. And what are the current concepts in diagnostics? What are the current concepts in biopsy, whether one has to do biopsy or not? What are the management, the imaging part of it? What image you should require when you get the CT scan? Not in all cases you should get a CT scan. So coming to the success of transoral laser surgery, it is a preoperative workup, which is most important. You should have a very good high definition or image enhancement technology. Imaging is very important. If you need a CT scan or a MRI, you should have a very good quality. This is a very important aspect, the experience of the surgeon. So as your graph of experience will come, you start treating the supraglottic, you start taking up the anterior commissure, you start doing hypopharyngeal cancers. So it all depends on your how frequently you are doing it, how many cases you are doing it, and how much well versed with your open surgery also. So patient selection, adequate laryngeal exposure, this is also a very important aspect of it. I will just cover up in 2 slides. Intraoperative diagnostic workup is very important. Once you start the dissection, you should know when to, what time you have to limit your dissection. And once you treat it with laser, it doesn't mean that even if the margins are negative, you should know about, you have to tell the patient about the post-operative follow-up. So these are the basic high definition laryngoscopy. Video stroboscopy, voice analysis is very important, because once you are doing a extended cordectomy, or even if you are doing a type 2 cordectomies, like you are excising a part of the vocal cord, you have to know the patient, you have to tell the patient that your voice will be affected. So basic voice analysis, you should know the Gravas scale and jitter and shimmers. Those things you have to know it. And NBI is very important aspect, because now it has been widely been used in office, in peroperative, in follow-ups, in all cases of laryngeal cancer, and it has come as a in European Laryngologic Society, even for European Cancer Society, it has come as a follow-up. I should follow up with the using the high definition laryngology and NBI. Imaging HRCT, perioperative assessment using high definition or 4K images. So image enhancement technology, I already talked so much about it. NBI, we all know the concept of NBI. It is narrowband imaging, and it gives a reflection of the capillary bed in the submucosa and the mucosa, and with which you identify the characteristic of the tumor. Their classification is there for the NBI, which you can access it through my previous presentations. So once you are doing assessment in office, you have to know about what is a near endoscopy, that you have to analyze the patient using a flexible bronchoscope going as close to the lesion. So this slide shows how the lesion look like. So you see it from a different areas, look like a hyperkeratotic lesion, but once you go closer to it, you can see there are the lesion which gives a intrapapillary capillary loops and brown dots. So high definition laryngoscopy and image enhancement technology has got its own role, and one has to use it because that makes a lot of difference. Maybe with the standard definition laryngoscopy, you will see it as a hyperkeratotic lesion, but in actual fact, it is a the use of the high definition scopy is very important, and this has been proven by an article by the impact of close and positive margins in transforal laser by the same group from Italy, and they have seen that the use of the NBI per operative, the negative proportion of negative margins are higher using an NBI, and incidence of close superficial margins is also low using a NBI, and they have compared with the control studies. So imaging is we have to know when to get an image. So what indication you have to get that is in all the cases you have to get the CT scan or MRI. So the indication for imaging is it should be a deep infiltration of vocal cord. If you suspect in a high definition laryngoscopic finding, and if you think that tumor is just going close to the anterior curvature, you should get an image. If you think that is going posterior part, going to the body of a retinoid, you must get it. It is not that in a mid-cord lesion, a small lesion, you send the patient for image. Lesion extending to superior arcuate line, that is once you think that it is covering and you can't see the ventricle very clearly, better to get a CT scan. And subglottic or supraglottic, if you suspect that it is there. So if it is going up to the false cord, you must get a CT scan so that you will know that how much is the paraglottic extent of the tumor. So coming again, what is the current concept in it? So commercially, there is no radiofrequency coil that is designed to do an MRI in a patient of malignancy larynx, but nowadays few imaging technology which has been developed in MRI, in which the artifacts which are related to the breathing and swallowing has been reduced. So there is a specific indication of MRI when to get it. Once you suspect, like in post-RT case, you want to differentiate between a tumor, edema, or fibrosis, like those cases. Or once you think that the tumor is going into the paraglottic space or encroaching it. So, but that is your radiologist or the radio technician should be trained enough to report or analyze those cases. So that is an advancement into it, and now my radiologist also had developed a same type of radio frequency coil which reduce the artifacts for the breathing and swallowing with it. So once you see the results of what are the role of what are the sensitivity and specificity of MRI and CT scan, the MRI has got a very high sensitivity of as compared to CT scan, but the specificity that is true negatives specificity of CT scan is higher. So the sensitivity of MRI is 89 versus 66% in CT scan, but MRI has got a less specificity as compared to CT scan. But primarily we get CT scan for all this thing. But once you have got a very good MRI, your radiologist is good enough. You can report about the high quality MRIs also. So if you see the CT scan or compare with the MRI, and you see that in early stage anterior commissure carcinomas, the cartilage invasion rate range from 8.5 to 10%, but in stage 2 carcinoma, it has reached up to 20%. So once if you see the patient has got flexible scopy, patient has got T2 lesion, you must get a CT scan or MRI. So coming to the other exposure part of it, already discussed it. Laryngoscore is there. This is used for anterior commissure malignancies. And so far, hello.
Yes, sir. It is audible, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Laryngoscope, it has an 11-point score. So these are almost the same factors which are important for Cormack-Lehane grading. So these are important because this will predict our end results of transoral laser surgery. As I have already told you, what are the factors which affect the transoral laser results? One of it is difficult laryngeal exposure. If you don't have a good exposure, then there's a problem with it. So on this scoring system, this has been given by Piazza, and they have divided into various class of exposure. Zero exposure, when you easily see the anterior commissure without any counter pressure. Class 1 is when you use a large bore, that is Dido laryngoscope, and you have to use a third hand extra laryngeal pressure, then it's class 1. So class 2 is anterior commissure visualization with large bore laryngoscope, and you have to change the position head also. Because normally what we do is we flex the neck over the chest and extension at atlanto-occipital joint. But in class 2, we have to do both the flexion at the neck and flexion at the head also. So class 2, and then there is a class 3, that is small bore laryngoscope you have to use, not the normal Dido laryngoscope. And you have to use a flexion position. These are the difficult position. Class 4 is impossible visualization of anterior commissure. So class 3, class 4 are the DLE, that is difficult laryngeal exposure, and class 0, 1 are the good laryngeal exposure. So scope of each parameter were added and ranging from 0 to 17. That is how you assess the patient. Once the patient comes in your OPD, you will note that this patient will have a very good exposure or this patient will have a bad exposure. So coming on to it, he has analyzed 126 patients and he has divided into group A, that is 0 to 1 good exposure, and group B is with a poor exposure. And they have compared the result, the positive surgical margin in these patients. So what they have seen is 17.8% in group A, that is with a good laryngeal exposure, the chances of positive margins. While in group B with a difficult laryngeal exposure, the positive surgical margin is higher. So just I'll show you a video of this patient. This patient has a left vocal cord growth, and my assistant is trying to push it down, the growth. Though the site of the laryngoscope little bit more advanced, so I have to bring it back, adjust but still I am not able to see the anterior margin of the tumor. And this I am using it 30 degree, even with this much pressure. Now he has withdrawn the pressure. So this is a patient who, if I operate this case, then patient will definitely come up with a recurrence. So, and if patient exposure, you can see the anterior commissure. I'm just removing the tumor from the anterior commissure, and up to the thyroid cartilage I can see it. So this patient is a patient with a good laryngeal exposure, and their chances of recurrence will be very less. And this was a revision case because this patient has come up for the small recurrence at the anterior commissure. So little bit about the anterior commissure, why it is different entity. So it is a small area and it's a heterogeneous group of tumor because it is a 2 to 3 millimeter area and difficult anatomy because of the exposure, assessment methods, staging, and management aspect of it. So exposure, I already discussed it, assessment method using different angle telescopes, staging on preoperative assessment, it may look like a very early cancer. Hello. Very early tumor, but maybe on imaging, it may be, it looks like a T1B lesion, but it might be a T3 lesion. So staging is very important once you are assessing such cases of anterior commissure. Management part is also different. If it is involving the inner perichondrium, then it is not a, it should not be done with the laser. It should be open partial or whatever radiation you think of. So coming to the anterior commissure again, I'll just show you the anterior commissures lack in inner perichondrium. This is a dense collagen fiber which is reaching up to here, and there are the fibers of the thyroid muscles on both the sides, the ventricular fold, and this is the inner perichondrium. And if you see the development of that, this is intermediate thyroid lamina, and this whole thyroid lamina is almost 5.7 to 7.2 millimeter area, and this area is deficient in inner perichondrium. But that is also an advantage of it because here the Boyle's ligament is attached, and the tumor spread is not from the Boyle's ligament because Boyle's ligament acts as a hindrance. So tumor goes from the side of it, from where the capillaries enter it, and the glands are there on either side of the Boyle's ligament. So spread of tumor is from the side. So this acts as also as a barrier. Carcinoma of anterior commissure of larynx again divided into 4 categories. Patient without any involvement of anterior commissure, they called it AC0. Patient with involvement of anterior commissure only on one side, AC1, both the sides, AC2, and patient with involvement of whole of anterior commissure on both the sides of the midline, that is AC3. So this has been classification which has been given, but is not being used very often in the literature. So it is given a long back, almost more than 24 years back, and that is how it is diagrammatically it has been shown like this. So 1 quadrant, 2 quadrants, and 3 quadrant, and then 4 quadrants. So 20% of glottic carcinoma has anterior commissure involvement, with only 1% originating from anterior commissure. So most of the tumor, they go from the cord and they go and involve the anterior commissure, either from the right or the left. And anterior commissure carcinoma with normal laryngeal movement is classified as T3 if internal cortical involvement. That is what I was saying. So if the inner perichondrium is involved, again it changes to. So TNM is not very clearly applicable in anterior commissure carcinomas. So I'll just show you a few how it makes a difference of one video, how the peroperative assessment can make a difference. This is a patient with a small lesion, one of my anesthetist father. So if you see something is raised in the white light endoscopy, but once I shift it to the white light endoscopy, NBI, and you can clearly see the.
Sir, video is not coming, sir.
Video is not coming.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How to minimize it? Now you can.
PPT is coming.
Video is coming.
We can see the screen, sir, but yet to open, sir. The video to open.
Video is not.
Team viewer, sir, first.
What to do?
Just open the team viewer, sir. He will come and help you, sir.
Team viewer, where it is gone? Just a second.
Yes, sir.
I think I have closed it down or what?
No, sir. We already have the ID, sir. You just open it. That's it.
Yeah, but I think I have closed it.
Okay, sir. Ankur,
Yes, yes, sir.
yeah, can you take over?
No, it's the team viewer is not running.
Not ready.
Yes, yes, yes.
Sir, please open your team viewer just like before you have done it.
Yes, yes,
Ankur, you have that ID and password now?
yes, yes, yes.
No, I think I have closed it.
Yeah, just please open it, sir. That's all.
Shared the new ID. I've shared it.
Okay, okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Shall I start it?
Yes, yes, yes.
Shall I continue it?
Hello, Pammi.
Yes, Ankur.
Yes, yes, yes. So give me the team viewer ID. I think
Just give me. Just मैं आपको भेज ही रहा हूँ. Right.
you sent over the chat box. Yes. यार
Hello.
So he got the ID, sir. Another minute he is getting it.
Link and hello.
Ankur, I think Ankur is online, sir. He's doing.
hello sir, please play the
Okay. Shall I?
yes, 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 yes.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
Video is coming?
Yes, sir. Now it is there, but it's not running. But video slide
No,
is
no.
there.
Running. Video is running.
Now it is running, sir. Right. It is running, sir.
Now we can see the video.
Okay, okay. So this is a per-operative assessment of the vocal fold. You see the white light endoscopy, there are raised areas like this. And this is an assessment which is very important because that will decide whether your anterior curvature is involved or not involved. And that will give you the recurrence-free survival for this patient. So on NBI, it looks like a small brown dots are there, and this came out to be a carcinoma in situ on the right side. And if you see, these are the dense populated and these are the sparsely populated white dots. And this was moderate dysplasia on the left cord. So both the cords are involved, but on pre-operative assessment, it was more like a, and this is again a second video which again highlight the importance of for operative. There are 3-4 important points one has to remember it once you are doing the assessment. One is the palpation of the vocal fold. Like this way I am doing it. I hope the video is coming. And now I have shifted to the NBI. Hello?
Yes, sir,
Yeah.
we can see the video, sir. Yes.
Yeah. So it is NBI. You can see there's a growth is there. And then third is the, you use a vocal fold separator so that you can see the Lindholm detectors. You can see whether the ventricle is involved or not. So this is a very important aspect of it. And the last one is, this is a palpation method. Second one is using an NBI. Third is vocal fold separator, and the fourth one is the injecting a local anesthetic here, and see that in the superficial lamina you can see that the whole thing has been elevated. So it means the tumor is not deep infiltrating type, and you can manage it with the type 2 cordectomy. So coming back to the, again, a controversial point, whether to do a biopsy or not to do a biopsy. The current concept is, if performing a biopsy for a small lesion like this is of no use, because it will create a misclassification for it from where you have taken the biopsy. That creates a confusion into pathologist mind also, and you'll also be confused. So performing biopsy to classify gate of dysplasia is limited because of risk of misclassification. Second point is underdiagnosis. So you may have taken a superficial random biopsy that will come out to be a moderate dysplasia, but actually the patient was having a invasive squamous cell carcinoma. So underdiagnosis will be there. Extensive biopsy, if you have done a very huge biopsy pieces like that, so that will create a complete excision of the tumor, and the patient comes in the follow-up for NBI or for another referral to me, and then I have to think about it, whether to redo it surgery or whether to wait it. So you have completely excised the tumor itself. And the last one is, if you have done a biopsy and there are blurring of the true borders between the lesion and the mucosa. So the second surgeon or a surgeon who has already done it may lead into extended dissection. So if I do extended dissection, then patient voice quality will be compromised. So these are the 4 important factors you should avoid doing a biopsy if you are planning a patient for single stage transforaminal lasers. So there are 2 things. One is single stage transforaminal laser, other is double stage transforaminal lasers. Single stage means you do both the procedure at one time. That is no biopsy, straight away excision. There is a contraindication to single stage also. So that I'll cover up in my next slide. So hydrodissection, if you have done a biopsy, the hydrodissection will not be easy because you have already damaged the superficial lamina propria, and it will be very difficult for you. So these are the few things you have to remember it, why I am saying no to biopsy for a small lesion, for a single stage transforaminal laser surgery. Misclassification, underdiagnosis, complete excision, and if you blur the margin, then more excision will lead into bad voice, and hydrodissection will not be possible. So coming to the single stage TLM, as I told you, that is single stage without biopsy, double stage is biopsy. And this term has come up long back, but the concept has come up in long back in 1984, but now it has now frequently be used single stage TLM and double stage TLM. Hello, this slide is not moving.
No, sir.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
can continue. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that
It is
was
moving, sir. It is fine.
yeah. So initially in 1994, the Pareti has first presented his work on single stage TLM, endoscopic laser excision for selected glottic cancers, mid-glottic without involvement of anterior commission. Then again he modified it and again published his series of 200 in 2001 with 88 cases of type 1 to type 5 quadectomy, infiltrative glottic cancers involving anterior commission. So single stage TLM is indicated when the lesion is high suspicion of early glottic cancer on high definition laryngoscopy or NBI. So you can go ahead and do a single stage TLM. The lesion has to be confined to two vocal cord which preserve vocal cord movements. So you have to justify it. If you are doing it for if you do a wider excision, then you have to justify for the patient voice quality also and the results of your surgery. So SSTLM spare the burden of second operation. Advantage of single stage is it spare the burden of second operation, physician consultation, operating room and hospitalization cost. In India, these factors are very important because patient has, if he is undergoing 2 surgeries, you have to think about the cost of the patient. Then again, he has to get admitted for it. So for very early cancer, you can go ahead if it is not. So that is again coming back to it. So contraindication of single stage TLM. So when you will not do it, the involvement of paraglottic fat, thyroid cartilage, body of arytenoid, supraglottic or subglottic lesion. Tumor like this should not do a single stage TLM. And these are also the indication for getting an image also. CT scan is must in these cases. So once you're getting a CT scan for such type of lesion, better to go ahead with the double stage transoral lasers. That is first the biopsy, then little bit about hyperplasias and dysplasia. These are a few images, keratosis, mild, moderate dysplasias, carcinoma in situ. That is how NBI makes a difference in your preoperative diagnostic. There are 2 other terms which has often been used, microinvasive and microcarcinomas. Microcarcinoma is superficial carcinoma, maximum size of 10 by 10 by 3 millimeter depth. That is 10 millimeter in width and 3 millimeter in the depth. Microinvasive that has not yet infiltrated the muscle of the vocal fold. So coming back again, what are the chances of conversion of each of it? There are various studies. These are the meta-analysis of various studies that compares the conversion rate of mild, moderate, and severe dysplasia. If you see, the chances of malignancies is higher in severe dysplasia, and average duration of conversion is also varied from each stage, like mild, moderate, and severe. So these are just the theoretical aspect of it. So now coming to the surgical aspect of single that is transoral laser surgery. Before we go into the transoral laser, we have to know a little bit about the vascular supply of the larynx. This is a very good description of anatomy in the Frontiers in Laryngology the supplement which has come up last year. So this is a superior laryngeal artery which supplies the epiglottis, and there is a branch of it which goes into the larynx, and it has got 2 branches, that is anterior inferior branch and the posterior inferior branch. So posterior inferior branch and the anterior inferior branch, and there is a branch which is a paracommissural artery, which is a branch of the cricothyroid artery. So cricothyroid comes from outside. And if you look again in the cross section of it, the coronal cut of it, you again see there is a branch of the posterior inferior artery, again divides into two, anterior branch and the posterior branch. And once you start doing the dissection for bilateral cord palsy and other things, you will know the importance of these branches. So, and if you look at, there's a word known as TAN1 and TAN2. These are the branches which is laterally to the muscle. It goes laterally like this, and it bleeds sometime once you are doing a transmuscular or the extended cordectomy. So these are the vessels which runs like this, and it comes and it forms a common plexus here at the cricothyroid level, that is infracommissural area. And these paracommissural artery, it anastomose with the branch of the cricothyroid artery, which comes from outside. So this is again a depiction of branches of superior laryngeal artery. And this, the epiglottic artery, it goes through the pharyngoepiglottic fold. This is very important once you are doing a supraglottic dissection. So supraglottic dissection, this is a major supply to the supraglottis. So again, the same description of posterior inferior artery, which divides into two, anterior branch and the posterior branch. And these are the, if you see the muscle fiber, it is just lateral to it. That is TAN1 and TAN2. TAN1 is lateral to the muscle, and TAN1 anastomosis is just medial to the muscle. Now, technique of dissection in these cases, you may use a laser. You can use a cold instrumentation. So cold instrument, you can use it for type 1 and type 2 cordectomy once you are doing a very superficial dissection. So you can use a cold instrument like sickle knife and flap elevators, and lasers you can reserve it for type 3 and extended application of it. But whatever you are well versed with it, but type 1 and type 2 you can do even with the cold instrumentation also. Saline epinephrine infusion technique, also known as hydrodissection. It helps in a patient with a very superficial lesion, just above the superficial lamina propria, and this is good for subepithelial and the subligamentous cordectomy. So these terms I will just come up in my next slides. So coming to the, what are these terms are like. These are the classification which has been given in 2000 by the European Laryngologic Society, the types of cordectomy. This cordectomy classification has been designed on the depth of your dissection. So type 5, that is extended type of cordectomy, again we divided into 4 types: type A, type B, and type C, and type D. Anterior commissure involvement, contralateral cord. B is once you excise the arytenoid or part or a whole or a partial part of the arytenoid. Ventricular fold, if you are excising it, that is type 5C, and type 5D when you are excising the subglottis. So subepithelial cordectomy. This is not opening. I will just, and this is subepithelial cordectomy is basically a diagnostic also and therapeutic also. So for a very small lesion, you can use this technique for hyperplasia, dysplasia, carcinoma, and situ without sign of microinvasion. So subligamentous cordectomy, that is type 2 cordectomy. Once you have to excise up to the, I don't know why these videos are not opening. So subligamentous, let's try it again. Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir. Now, sir, it is visible. The video is running, sir.
Video is visible?
Now, yes, sir, it is running also, sir. Smoothly.
Okay. So now you can see this is a subepithelial chordectomy. So the setting of a laser for subepithelial chordectomy is you have to be very gentle, and you have to use the laser as for the benign condition of the larynx, because you have to give the patient a very good voice plus the complete removal of the disease. So if you look at it, the white part of it is the ligamentous part of the vocal folds. So I am just moving my laser tangentially and creating a flap like this, and the dissection is not cutting and not going through the ligament. So this is a type 1 chordectomy, that is subepithelial chordectomy, and it is en bloc removal. And if you compare it with a cold instrument, the bleeding will be, there will not be any bleeding with using a laser, as compared to if you use a cold instrument, there will be chances of bleeding will be there. Then I'll just show you the type 2 chordectomy. Can you see the video? Hello?
Yes, sir. We can see, sir. It is running, sir.
Okay, okay. So this is a type 2 chordectomy. There are two ways you can do the dissection, because if you see this on the side of it, I have removed the part of the false chord. So this is known as ventriculectomy. So ventriculectomy gives a better view of the lateral extent of the tumor. So if you can't see the tumor, the lateral extent of the tumor, then better to do a false chord excision. False chord excision, you can use a AccuBlate or you can use a scanner of the laser. So this is type 2 chordectomy, in which you are excising a part of the epithelium, superficial lamina propria, and the ligamentous part, that is intermediate in the deep layer of the superficial lamina propria, and part of the muscle also, superficial part of the muscle, but not the deeper part of the muscle. And this also gives a very good voice after new cord formation after 3 months of the surgery. So initially patient will have a little bit hoarse voice, but later on he will have a very good voice. So if you look into it, the final look of the, if you see this, I have removed the part of the false chord, and this is a part of the, you can see ligamentous has been removed, and part of the muscle is seen here also. And here it is completely intact posteriorly. So now coming to the part that is type 3 chordectomy. Type 3 is known as transmuscular chordectomy. That is, you are excising the part of the muscle. Here what I am doing is I am excising the part of the false chord just to open and see the tumor. This is a big tumor which is going into the muscle. So here I am excising the false chord. Here I am using a blade. But whenever we start the dissection, first the assessment has been done with using the NBI. So this is the transmuscular. We are excising the part of the muscle with the tumor. I'll just play forward to the fast forward. I do not know how the video is coming up, but once you are doing this surgery under high definition, this white light and of the microscope, xenon light, you can easily differentiate between a healthy tissue and the tumor. So the cut of the laser will tell you about whether you are through the tumor or you are away from the tumor. So 2 millimeter to 4 millimeter margin is the safe margin for any glottic malignancy, but it is higher for the supraglottic. It is 5 mm to 7 mm for the supraglottic malignancies. So try to preserve it as much as possible so that patient will have a good voice also. I'll just move it fast forward. So this is the final assessment of that. So part of the ligament is left out here because the tumor not deep infiltrating, but here the muscle has gone. Now again, I will show you a combination of this is type 5A cordectomy. I hope you are getting the videos. Mr. Pammi, hello. If you look here, you can see there is a thyroid cartilage. I have gone up to the thyroid cartilage. So type 5A cordectomy, once the tumor is going into the anterior commissure, and here where I am firing is, it is the lower border of the thyroid cartilage, and this is the cricothyroid membrane. This part usually bleeds. This part usually bleeds because of the paracommissural vessels which are coming from here, and they are anastomosed with the anterior inferior branch of the superior laryngeal artery. So, but it is not a big bleeder, so you can control it with the bipolar. Now you can see the lower border of the thyroid cartilage here. And here we change the setting a little bit. The firing duration is less, and we gently do it so that we should not make a hole it. So that is how we have to separate it from the, so this is type 5A cordectomy. Now I'll just show you a combination of, this is a supraglottic tumor, glottic supraglottic tumor with not deep extension. On CT scan, it doesn't have a deep extension. It was more a proliferated type of tumor. And this tumor, because of its size, it has been removed as a piecemeal in 2 pieces. The same method, first the ventriculectomy, so that the whole of the tumor, you can see it in one view. And then I usually start the dissection from anterior part of it so that I can separate the tumor from the thyroid cartilage. And this is a combination of type 5A and type 5B because I have removed the part of the arytenoid also. So type 5A, type 5B and type 5C also because I have removed the ventricular fold also. So A, B and C. So separating it from the thyroid cartilage, same way, controlling the bleeding. Control is very important because to use both the suction and the bipolar. This is quite a big tumor, so it has been removed in 2 pieces. So for posterior dissection, you have to little bit loosen the laryngoscope because you initially focus it for the anterior commissure. So it is just suspension is more towards the anterior commissure, but now once you start dissecting the posterior part of it, you have to release the pressure of the laryngoscope so that you can focus more on the posterior part of it. The other way you can do it, you can relax it, and once you have removed the anterior part of the tumor, you can just remove the the Mallinckrodt tube, and then you start dissecting it without the tube. So you can remove the endotracheal tube, and then you can do the posterior dissection because it depends on your visibility, how much you can see it clearly. So this part of the arytenoid is with the specimen. So that is how this is a second part of the tumor. First part has been removed. And every part has to be sent separately. And the last one is type 6 chordectomy for so this is the assessment part of it. And now for operative assessment of the tumor, this is more like a supracommissural tumor, not exactly involving the anterior commissure, but there is a component of it which is like this. But on CT scan, it is free. So I've gone ahead with it, and still the patient is 1 year follow-up and free from the disease. So the same way, this is a huge tumor, and my preferred laryngoscope is the Lindholm laryngoscope for this type of chordectomy, because Lindholm is, you can just keep it in the above the petiole, and you can see tumor from above. So anterior incision like this, halfway. And once you release it from here, the whole of the tumor will come down like that. So I'll just skip this video. Go back to the PPT. Yes. Type 2 I have already covered. Transmuscular, yes. Total complete chordectomy. Extended chordectomy, I have already showed you the type 5A, 5B, combination of it. Type C is ventricular fold is involved. Type D, subglottis. But normally subglottis is, most of the surgeons, they don't do the transoral lasers because of the chances of recurrence is very high. And but it has been included in the classification. So type 6 chordectomy, that is once there is a tumor which is supracommissurally going down. So bilateral anterior chordectomy with commissurectomy is done. Like I showed you in the last video. So once you keep the laryngoscope in this position, it is very easy to remove the tumor. So how to specimen it? So surgical specimen, either you fix it like this in the cork, or you fix it in a dried cucumber piece. Normally what I usually do is I use a ink, methylene blue, and then I put a vinegar here, acetic acid diluted 6%, so that wherever I suspect a margin, either anterior commissure, and the deep margin is important. So deep margin, and then we put a diluted acetic acid, that is vinegar, and then we put in, because sometime in formalin the color get disappeared. So to fix that color, so we use a acetic acid. That is what our pathologist has advised us, so we do it like that. So coming to the histopathology reporting, this is again an important part of it once you are starting the practice of transoral laser. So what is negative margin, what is closed margin? So negative margin, when the tumor margin is more than 1 mm from the site of the tumor. Closed margin when the tumor is 0 to 1 millimeter, and positive margin in presence of tumor at the surgical edge, even if it is a carcinoma in situ at the surgical site. So if the pathologist report it's a positive margin, so superficial margin or the deep margin, that is very important, whether it's a single margin which is positive or multiple superficial margin which is important. So these things you have to ask your pathologist, that whether a single superficial margin is positive, whether it's a multiple superficial margin is positive. So because that will decide about your follow-up, and that will decide about your chances of recurrence, because then you have to tell the patient that you may require a second surgery. So extra surgical margins taken at the end of the procedure is known as definite surgical margins. So that margin you can send it separately for histopathology. So these are the various grades where the pathologist will report, like negative superficial, closed deep, positive single superficial, positive multiple superficial, positive deep margin. So on these basis, Piazza and Paretti, they have given their results. Multiple superficial and positive deep margin will have a disease-free and recurrence-free survival is reduced if the patient is having a multiple superficial margin or positive deep margin. So this patient will again go for the tumor board, and it will be decided whether the patient has to undergo radiation treatment or second surgery. And then you have to review your videos also to see whether the patient was having a difficult laryngeal exposure or other things where the patient has got a recurrence. So deep margin should be considered a single risk factor. And early glottic carcinoma has an excellent local control rate. So be sure about it. So if patient has a closed margin or single positive superficial margin, don't go for second surgery, monthly follow-up, look with NBI and follow it like that. Patient has got multiple superficial margin or deep margin, then you have to review the patient for the second surgery or open partial or adjuvant radiation. These are the results of disease-specific and recurrence-free survival, reduced in positive multiple superficial margin. This again be reported by Paretti et al. So for negative margin, first year is 2 monthly follow-up. Second year, 3 monthly follow-up. Very simple. First year, 2 monthly follow-up. Second year, 3 monthly follow-up. Third year, 4 monthly follow-up. Fourth year, 6 monthly follow-up. And then fifth year onwards, yearly follow-up. Or for P2, imaging added every 6 months for first 2 years, even if the endoscopy is negative. So these are the tumor which sometimes remains behind the intact mucosa. So you have to get it there. Limitation of TLM is, what are the limitations? One is difficult laryngeal exposure. You should not attempt transoral lasers. Second is the site of the tumor. So site of the tumor, hello? So site of the tumor is anterior commission involvement in craniocaudal direction. That is, if it is a tumor is going from above and down, like this type of tumor. So this is not a limitation of transoral laser surgery. Second is invasion of posterior paraglottic space, like this space is involved. Then there are chances that this might have involved the cricoarytenoid joint, and there are chances of recurrence. And these are the sites which are difficult to dissect because of its site, location, and plus bleeding aspect and involvement of the CA joint. Massive infiltration of pre-epiglottic space. If you think that this is an infrahead or supracommissural tumor, and you suspect that there is chances that it may have this invasion into the pre-epiglottic space, then you should not do a transoral lasers. Minor thyroid invasion, that is again converted into T3 lesion. Avoid doing a transoral laser. On these basis of limitation and the results, they have come up with the same group of people from Italy. They have come up with a prognostic zone in laryngeal cancer. They have divided into, after studying their results in more than 400 cases of glottic and supraglottic tumors, they have analyzed it that these are the factors which are very important to decide the prognosis of the patient and your follow-up of these patients. These are the 6 subcategories they have divided into, but grossly if you look at it, anterior and posterior paraglottic, that is, and vertical extension, that is transcommissural extent, which is very important, because if the patient has got infracommissural compartment involvement, there are chances that patient might have got spread through the cricothyroid membrane, and if it's supracommissural, there are chances that patient might have a pre-epiglottic space involvement. So coming back just to a review of literature, because these are the people who have done extensive work on it, years and years, and extensive work on transoral lasers, to remember few of the great work by Steiner, that impact of anterior commission involvement, local control, early glottic cancer, in which They will study the early glottic cancer T1 and T2 cancers. If you see T1A, that is one cord involvement is there. The local control rate when the anterior commissure is involved, the local control rate is 84%. When the anterior commissure involvement is, the anterior commissure involvement is not there, the local control rate is higher. Again, in T1B, that is once both the cords are involved, with the anterior commissure involvement, the local control rate is 73%. That is horseshoe type of growth, which is involving it. And then anterior commissure, once it is absent, the local control rate is very high, very good. But if you see that T2A stage, the T2A, that is 5-year local control rate with anterior commissure present is 79%. When the anterior commissure is absent, the local control is almost the same, because that is what, and laryngeal preservation is almost the same, 93% and 97%. There is a little bit more advancement in the surgical approach in the anterior commissure cancer. That is, for difficult laryngeal exposure, there are only 2 cases has been studied. What they have done is they have done type 3 thyroplasty for such patients who has got difficult laryngeal exposure in anterior commissure. What they have done is type 3 cordectomy, and for type 3 thyroplasty, in which they have given a paramedial incision on both the sides, either side of the anterior commissure, and they have pushed the anterior commissure back just to make it this area more prominent through the laryngoscope, and then they excise the tumor like this. And they have found a very good results in patient with difficult laryngeal exposure. So further studies is required in this field. To conclude is, it is evidence-based review of patient with glottic cancer, early stage, single modality. One should go for a single modality treatment for early stage. If you really want to give a patient a cure and a good voice, risk-benefit analysis should be explained to the patient. Morbidity more with multimodality treatment, which outweighs the oncological benefit. For T2 glottic tumors with normal movement, tumor control was equivalent with radiotherapy or external surgery. To conclude, for selection of case is very important, as I've already covered in my lecture. Unimolar treatment should be there. Don't mix up all the things together, but even if you fail it, you have to explain to the patient what are the reasons for it. All T2 tumors are not the same. One should remember it. That has been a great statement by Steiner that not all T2 tumors are same. Superficial spreading tumor is different from the impaired mobility vocal cord tumors. So even if you see the tumor like this, you may have a very good cure even with the transferal lasers. Urim bimotor supraglottic mucosal extension is a non-predictive of cartilage extension in anterior commissure carcinoma. So it doesn't mean that anterior commissure involved. There are chances that it has been reported in various specimens of open partial laryngectomy cases that there are 20% chances of involvement of cartilage in anterior commissure cancer. So it is not that it is 100% the cartilage will be involved. So 80% chances the cartilage might be free. So you should give a more importance to 80% rather than focusing more on the 20% of failures. So TLM requires much experience, advanced surgical skill, and proper instrumentation for complete resection of the disease. Thank you very much. Is there any question? Is there?
You can see at the Q&A just near to this toolbar.
Where?
Yeah, I request all the participants to ask their questions now.
I can't see it.
So Dr. Japneet has asked what should be the further management of dysplasia on the HPE of vocal growth?
Dysplasia of?
what should be the further management of dysplasia on the HPE of vocal growth?
If it is a mid-chord dysplasia, even if it is an anterior commissure also is there, dysplasia, that has to be excised. So normally what in my lecture I have told you that biopsy is not been required for very small lesion. Dysplasia means it is just involving the epithelium only. So you can go ahead and excise the, or if the your pathologist say that it's a mild or moderate dysplasia, you can follow this patient in your regular clinic OPD. If you have got a very good flexible high definition laryngoscope, bronchoscope, or NVI is there, you don't have to operate that case. You can just follow it, give the patient proton pump inhibitors, and change the patient lifestyle, and call the patient initially for every month, and then you can see the response of it. You can call the patient every 3 monthly, because these dysplasia, they doesn't go into, all dysplasia doesn't go into squamous cell carcinoma. You have to reassure the patient. Reassurance is most important aspect. Not all dysplasia will require a surgery if it is mild to moderate. If it is severe dysplasia, yes, you have to tell the patient for a surgical, but it's not a very urgent thing. So conversion is not that very rapid. Any other question?
Dr. Rishi Srivastava, sir, you can
Yes, sir.
speak.
Can I?
Yeah, please,
Yeah.
please.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Dr.
Sir, can we compare the results of doing translesional surgery by laser and coblator? Some people, as the laser is so costly, can it be replaced with coblator other than working on a vocal cord itself, like for carcinoma having supraglottic extent and anterior commissure extent, when most part of the vocal cord is being removed? Can it be removed with
Because
coblator with MLW1?
I'm just saying that it is very difficult to get the issue is not that you cannot do it. You can do it. But the problem comes in the margin assessment. If you compare, the pathologist has to report the margins. Everything will depend on the margin. With the coblator, the margin definition will not be as clear as compared to the CO2 laser. And second thing is, which is a biggest advantage of laser, it is a non-carrier laser. It doesn't require any instrument to carry it there, because here your field will be blocked with the coblation wand. You are using a held thing. So that is how, with that narrow area, you have to carry both the things. Coblator wand, so technically it is not sound. And secondly, regarding the margin will not be clear using the coblation. For a very gross surgery like posterior chordotomy, you are doing it for bilateral cord palsy. That is okay, because there the voice is, though voice is very important, but still, if you are removing a posterior part of the vocal cord using a cobblator, you can use a cobblator also, but not for malignancy, because you require a third instrument in the field, and that area is still a narrow field. So